It's time to talk about my goals for UTMB. As I'm coming towards the end of the first week of tapering, I've been spending a bit more time looking at the preparation around the race, and one of the key areas for me has been working on timings and my goals for the race. So I've had a few inquiries about what my goals are, and in this video I'll go through in detail about how firstly I've calculated them and what they are, and also discuss some other elements which have also had a bearing on that, looking at a bit more about mental preparation as well to help try and ensure that I finish the race in a good position. To calculate my goals, I've been looking at previous results and used that as a pacing strategy, and this is an approach that I've used on a number of races previously and it works really well. With a race like UTMB, it's fantastic because you can find the results so easily online and all the various splits by aid station, and then from that I've put it in to a Excel document and done some calculations for different times. Now with UTMB, the route does change from year to year depending on the weather conditions, but I found one used results from a year where they did the complete race. So that's basically what I've been doing in terms of calculating it, and rather than using an individual, I use a number of people who finished at a time that I'm trying to achieve and get an average split for them. So what is the goal of the race? Well, whenever I go into an ultramarathon, any endurance event, I always have multiple goals, an A, B and C goal, and the A's if everything goes perfectly and the C's if things begin to go a bit wrong. So for UTMB, it is my first 100-mile race, well actually slightly more than 100 miles, and the C goal is very much to finish, because ultimately that is the main reason that I'm doing this race, is to experience the whole UTMB atmosphere, and I want to finish the race. So 46.5 hours is the cut-off time, and if I do it in 46 hours and 29 minutes, I will be happy, because my main goal, although it's the C goal, is to finish in the time limit essentially, and that's what I'll be looking to do. My B goal, if I could go sub 40 hours, that would be absolutely fantastic. And then the A goal, if I had a perfect race, it would be somewhere in the region of sub 35 hours. So it's quite a broad range of 11.5 hours difference, but over a race that long, then it's easy to be at one extreme or the other for me. The reason I calculated 35 as my best time is I looked at my total time for my recce and worked out how long that took over the 4 days. And I also looked at results from previous races that I'd done, and that was very much working out, for example, Lavaredo, 120 kilometers. I looked at my time over the first 85 kilometers off that, added 10% onto that time, and then doubled it, and then added another 10% on for the second half to allow for even more slowing, and that again came out at around the sort of 35-hour time category. So that's where I've got the 35 hours from as my A goal, and if I did that, that would be reasonably well up the field, probably top half of the field as well, depending on obviously the other athletes who show up on the day. The other thing that I've done then based on those goals is looked at time splits, so I will know what time I need to be at Saint-Gervais, the first kind of aid station, Courmayeur, etc., all the way through, so I can keep track of where I am versus my goals, and that will help regulate my pace, because I know if I get into Saint-Gervais ahead of my time, then it will be very much that I've gone off too fast, and I'll know to slow down then early on in the race rather than pushing too hard and then blowing up later in the race. If you look at the speeds that people do, it is very much about slowing down the least. Almost the difference between a 35-hour time and a 40-hour time and a 46-hour kind of finish time at Saint-Gervais is quite close, but then it's just about the speed that people slow down at. So again, it's about pacing early on, especially those first few aid stations and getting through. This also helps with my fueling and nutrition strategy, so I'll know which aid stations I'm hoping to stop at, especially in the first half of the race. The second half, then it all kind of is making use of the resources available, but in the first few aid stations I'll have far more of a structured plan in place for that. The other thing that I've done for this race is look at previous results and where people have DNF, where they've dropped out of the race, and I now know where the key areas are that people will be dropping out from the race. So psychologically, I know that Courmayeur is one of the big areas where actually getting past Courmayeur and pushing on up that climb to Bertone will be a key boost for me once I get past that. Getting past Champex-Lac, then very few people drop out proportionately, but there's those key areas which I've now identified as the key areas where mentally, if I can get past them and just get out of those aid stations, then I'm going to be in a much better place as well. And that's been a real good exercise, just to identify where I'm most likely to feel down or where the temptation to drop out may arise, and being able to manage that. And that very much takes me on to the final part of this video, and it's about kind of the mental prep that I do. So that's linked with looking at the DNFs, but then also looking at kind of what if statements, what if something is to happen. So anyone who's followed the channel for a while will know at Lavaredo, my knee started hurting about 86 kilometers in, and I had to walk the last part. So this time now I've been working on what if that happens again at UTMB 85 kilometers in. Unlike Lavaredo, when I only had 35 kilometers left to walk, obviously it's only halfway through UTMB, so I've put in place strategies that I'll be able to manage that, and if it does happen, I'll be prepared. So mentally it won't be such a hard thing to deal with. And that's not just around potential injuries, but what if I feel sick, what if I start getting blisters. All the potential eventualities are out a huge list, and then put in place a strategy whilst I'm sat here, not in the race environment. So if it does happen during the race, it means that I'm in a lot better position to deal with it, and it doesn't cause me to get, mentally sort of out of place or distract me from the actual race. I've got a solution, I've got a set process in place for the what ifs. Now obviously I cannot think of everything that may happen on race day, but it's about putting in things that have happened previously and learning from that, and also things that could potentially happen, and having strategies in place to deal with it. And that's something that very much came from a triathlon background. What if I get a puncture? It's only just a puncture, it's a few minutes to change the tyre, etc, etc. So it's about managing that. Now, with the length of UTMB and potentially being out there for over 46 hours, there's a huge range of things which could go wrong. So therefore, it means that the what ifs that I've created are quite extensive, and it's about ensuring that I manage that. Looking at the timings as well in a little bit more detail, it's about working out the amount of time that I'll be between aid stations is one of the crucial parts of that, and fueling. So knowing what food I'll need to have with me to get me through that next section of the course. So there we are, the goals are out there. Ultimately the main one is to just enjoy the experience, and then the secondary goals are the time. So to finish, if I finish UTMB, I will be absolutely delighted. It is probably the first time that my C goal is something which I'd be really happy to achieve. And then moving forward, sub 40 and sub 35 hours. But going into the unknown, 50 kilometers further than I've ever done before, 4,000 meters more climbing. So when I think about it, it's basically doing Lavaredo and then adding on something like the Tromsø Sky Race onto the end of it, which just is quite an interesting way to look at it. But the goals are out there, and so there we are. That is what I'm looking to achieve. Are you doing UTMB? Have you set yourself goals? I'd love to hear what they are. Please leave a comment down below. Also, if you've enjoyed this video, make sure you give it a thumbs up and subscribe to the channel. Also, make sure you check out the TMR Coaching newsletter. There's a link to my website down below where you can fill in the sign up form, and that's just a weekly newsletter with top training advice. And I will see you next time.